How many of you had seen this movie, Inherit the Wind? Really is a very provocative movie, isn't it? It certainly doesn't paint religion in a very favorable light, and today we're going to try to redeem some of the aspects of the Inherit the Wind movie. This was produced in 1960, and at that point in time, evolution was the reigning paradigm in science. I would say it's still the reigning paradigm, but it's lost a lot of its luster in the last 50 years. And if you've been at any of the Socrates presentations in the last year or a couple years, you'll notice that in the last 50 years, the scientific evidence all of a sudden, instead of shifting toward the evolutionary paradigm, has shifted to the intelligent design paradigm. And that was the paradigm that was around for 2,000, 3,000 years before that there are certain things that can't be explained by evolutionary buildup of simple to complex, that they have to come from the top down. And we're going to talk about what does religion have to offer today? What does it have to offer science? Does it have something to offer science? Does it have something to offer to America? Does it have anything to offer me and you? And my favorite debating partner, as if you've been with us at all before, is Dr. Richard Dawkins, who is Chief Atheist Officer, let's put it that way, for the New Atheist Movement. And his shirt there says, religion, together we can find a cure. Because what he's called religion is a virus, like a virus, but it's harder to cure than a virus. So I put on my shirt to defend the other side, and for Socrates, think for yourself, know yourself. That's Socrates' motto, and that's how we've been conducting our series here. Let's look at the evidence and decide which way does it point. Does it point this direction? Does it point that direction? I'm going to answer these three questions today. What does religion have to offer? Well, first of all, believe it or not, I'm going to make a case that it offers better scientific answers than the current reigning scientific paradigm. The current reigning scientific paradigm is called materialism. Materialism is that all the universe, everything, including you and me, are just made up of molecules of motion that get together and go from the simple to the complex and build up. That's all there is. The paradigm that I'm going to talk about is a top-down paradigm. And these two paradigms, from top-down, where there's an eternal mind behind the universe and a design and purpose behind the universe, started with Plato. Plato and Aristotle were Socrates' two best students, and they had little different views on what the universe was made up of. Plato saw that there was perfect design and purpose in mind from the top, and it comes down to us in the form of the material objects. Aristotle, over years, decided that there was just matter in motion, and matter in motion came together through evolution and built up. Now, the real answer to any kind of question is there's a top-down view of it and there's a bottom-up view. They should cooperate. They should work together. Religion is a body of knowledge. Science is a body of knowledge, represented by the two circles. The best answer to any question we have is when those two paradigms can work together to give the best explanation. But as you'll see from my presentation, those have been ripped apart in our modern intellectual culture, where science can operate by itself independently, and all the humanities operate in another area, but the religious areas and the humanities area are considered totally inferior. I went to science school. I was a physics major. We were in the building. We were the top guys over there. We and the mathematicians, and over there were the humanities. Those are the people that deal with other stuff. It wasn't important. That's how we were educated. That's how our whole generation has been educated in the last 150 years. We just assume that the priesthood, if you will, is materialistic science. So we're going to take that apart today and look at that. But those four questions were the 4 questions that the Socrates students always asked. If they saw anything and they said, what is it? They said, well, we need to have answers to these 4 questions. We have to know what its design and purpose is. We have to know, yes, what it's made of and how it operates and how it's built up, but we need all 4 answers to make any heads or tails of what it really is. Even in the Chronicle of Higher Education, which is the newspaper for professors throughout the colleges in the United States, says we have lost something here in our science education. We've lost the idea of the transcendent, that there's anything beyond this material world, that there's anything out there at all. If anything characterizes modernity is the loss of faith in transcendence, in a reality that encompasses and surpasses our everyday affairs. Well, we've lost it, not because science says that, it's because we've arbitrarily do not even ask the questions, does it have a design and purpose anymore? So today's science, materialistic science, is really only playing with half a deck. Half a deck. I'm going to quote our current top scientists and philosophers so you see that this isn't just an opinion of mine. This is what really is going on. Let's start with the cosmologist Carl Sagan. The universe, the cosmos, is all there is, all there ever was, all there ever will be. That means there's nothing outside, not even a possibility of anything outside that's transcendent. It's just the cosmos, just the universe. Daniel Dennett, who is one of the top philosophers, in the beginning there were no reasons, no purpose, no function. That eliminates that. We don't have to look anywhere. There's no reason for the universe. It just happens. We're just accidents. Darwin, when he came up with his theory about man being an evolved animal, he said, well, man thinks he was created by a great deity. I believe he was created from the animals. Peter Singer, Princeton University, was head of the ethics department there, quotes, human beings are not a special form of creation made in the image of God. Well, that just eliminates it. That's not a scientific statement. That's a philosophical statement. That's an ideological statement. He's an atheist, and that's what he believes. We can choose to believe him, but we ought to question why he believes that. Maybe there is a transcendent answer to that. Francis Crick was co-discoverer of the DNA structure. He spent the last 40 years of his life looking for how the brain evolved, how the human brain evolved. And he came up before he died, and he said, wrote a book, said, you are no more than a vast assembly of nerve cells and associated molecules. That's all you are. That's all I am. That's all he thinks he is, or was. Richard Dawkins, you cannot be both sane and educated and not believe in evolution. That's just an ideological, arbitrary, philosophical statement. Steven Weinberg won the Nobel Prize for his work on the first 3 minutes of the Big Bang. Did some brilliant work. He says, the more I understand the universe, the more it seems comprehensible, the more it also seems pointless. Well, that's true. If there's no design and purpose to it, what's the point? What's the point of even trying to understand? And then if you were educated in the mid-20th century, like I think probably all of us were, we know about the existentialists and Jean-Paul Sartre. And the existentialist said, well, if there's no meaning, no purpose, I'll just give up. I just have to make my own meaning and purpose. Every day I have to, what's my meaning and purpose? What's my meaning and purpose? And Bertrand Russell, who's probably one of the most famous of the philosophers of the 20th century, atheistic philosophers, so he finally said, I'm going to be honest about this. You must build your life on the firm foundation of unyielding despair. Well, that really makes you feel good. Unyielding despair. This isn't just individual opinions of scientists and philosophers. This is our National Academy of Sciences. 90% atheist, National Academy of Science, wrote a book called Science and Creationism in 1984. These are the points from it. And this is how our college education starts, from the top down, National Academy, University level, students, us. It just flows right down to us. Here's what they tell us. The technological progress depends on science and not religion. Well, God can't be appropriated by the scientific method. That's not true. If you spend any time in our first 3 years of Socrates with us, you know that we use the scientific method. Scientific method is wonderful. It's evidential. It's a controlled experiment. It says, let's set up a hypothesis. That's why we call it the God hypothesis. We didn't want to be arbitrary on anything. So we said, let's set up a God hypothesis and test it. They say that traditional religion conflicts with scientific evidence. Now, they don't mean scientific evidence. They mean materialism. They mean it conflicts with their ideological position that material things are all there is. So, therefore, science or religion is inferior to materialism. We must keep science and religion in mutually exclusive realms. Well, that's right. If you don't want if you don't want to interact with something, you just separate it out and say, you're inferior. That's what happens in our political system today. That's all we are. We're just clanging heads all together. So our Socrates idea is, what can we overlap and find truth together? How can we do that? Here's more from this book called Science and Creationism from the National Academy of Sciences. Life originated from dead chemicals. If you watch the news and listen to some of the PBS stations and so forth, we're just that close to creating life in a test tube. That's hogwash. I mean, that's not true. We're not any closer than we were 70 years ago when we lit a spark in a test tube flask and created a minuscule amount of amino acids. We're not any closer. In fact, it's farther away because the more we know about what's going on at that level, the farther away the goal is of understanding. It says that Darwinian evolution is a fact, not theory. You'll never hear about this being a theory. You'll hear it's fact. That's how we teach our kids from this high. Missing links. Well, they're there. They have to be there because our evolutionary theory demands that it's there. They're there somewhere. We don't know where. You'll see on the cover of Scientific American Lucy, pictures of Lucy, and you'll go to the Smithsonian Institute and you'll see these are our ancestors. It's fine to have cartoon caricatures and just draw a line between them, but lines in science means you have to have a mechanism. You have to have a cause and effect, and you have to have controlled experimentation that demonstrates that your theory, your hypothesis, is correct. Darwinian evolution has never been validated in that way. The goal of science is to seek material answers only. No, that's not the goal of science. The goal of science is to seek truth. Truth comes in the material world and it comes in the immaterial world, as I'm going to get to in a minute. But it does give a little nod to religion. It says religion makes people feel comfortable. That's good. That's how I was brought up. Religion makes people feel comfortable. And then in 2000, we had one final last desperate draw by the atheist movement called the New Atheist Movement that said that science is all there is and religion ought to be expunged. It's a virus that needs to be expunged. These four gentlemen were known as the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. They didn't last very long because I would say that the movement died in 2022. But in 2006, when Dawkins published his book, The God Delusion, he sold 3 million copies of that. In fact, America went from probably people checking the box for being religious from 86, 90%, something like that, to down to 60%. A whole group called nuns, N-O-N-E-S, came in at that point in time. We want to believe this kind of thing, and that's fine if they want to believe it. So now there's 30% of America believes that they're nuns. Religion poisons your ability to use your brain. True religion it's shame. The horror of religion is it allows people to believe what only lunatics believe. Religion is humanity's oldest illusion. There are no good reasons to believe in God. Well, okay, if that's the case, then how does materialistic science. I'll call it the modern scientific view. How does the modern scientific view answer our big questions that have been posed? Well, I would say not very well. The Big Bang Theory is a very good theory. It's validated to 15 decimal places or whatever, that something happened, a Big Bang at 15 billion years ago. That's fine. Where did that fireball come from? 1,000, what is it, 1,000 trillion degrees fireball. So what happened on the day before to create that? That is unanswered. Before, it used to be assumed that the universe was infinitely old. It didn't have a beginning. But now we say the universe has a beginning. Well, if it has a beginning, it had to have a beginner, right? There isn't anything that begins that didn't have a beginner. There is no such thing. If there's no mind behind the universe and no design and purpose, is what materialism says, then how come everything we look at in nature, everything that's alive, we look at with awe and wonder, and we say, why does it look like it has design and purpose? Materialism has no answer for that. You just say it's an illusion. It's a delusion, illusion. Get out of here. Don't bother me with your questions, right? These are questions your kids at 3 years old ask you, Daddy, why is the sky blue? Why does that look, does that hummingbird, was that designed? Science shows that life only comes from life. That was back in the 19th century. That was Louis Pasteur. He did experiments to show that life only comes from life. And yet we're spending billions of dollars in laboratories trying to make life out of non-life, out of mixing chemicals together. Darwinian evolution has never been demonstrated, yet science arbitrarily says that's how it happened. It's how it's happened because there's no other explanation. If God isn't out there, if there isn't a transcendent something that created outside the system, then it has to have evolved from inside the system. Well, that's just simple logic, but maybe the premise is wrong. Maybe there is something outside the system. The fossil record was supposed to vindicate Darwin. Darwin said, well, my theory will be vindicated by the fossil record. It will show that the accumulation of numerous small incremental improvements over time will yield a new species at a time, and will go from the simple to the complex. Well, the fossil record does show simple to complex, but it doesn't show any intermediate forms. These forms just appear in the fossil record, boom, like with no evolutionary history. Even the materialistic scientists will say, geez, it appears like that just abruptly came into being. Well, how could that happen? We don't know, but we'll find an answer. It's usually what you get fed back. A man appears in the fossil record with no evolutionary pathways from chimps. Now, there's plenty of cartoons that connect the dots that say Lucy was a precursor, here's the Neanderthals, and so forth. But Homo sapiens man just appears in the fossil record. Science has no idea now we're in the 21st century. A lot of work is being done in neuroscience, understanding the brain, being able to track what's going on in the brain, and in neuroscience, is beginning to look at, well, what's consciousness? Well, consciousness is what you're all doing. I mean, you're aware that you're here. You're aware that something's going on. You're talking to yourself inside yourself. You know that you have a center of consciousness, and you know there's something out there. There's something subjective going on. There's something objective going on out there. Materialistic science has no explanation, barely deals with it, except we'll find an answer of write another funding proposal, basically. We're going to look today at what religion has to offer. I'm going to do it in 3 ways. I'm going to show what it's going to improve our scientific answers. This isn't just substituting religion for science. No, it's how they can work together from design and purpose coming down and materials in motion coming up. So I'm going to give improved scientific answers. I'm going to tell you that America needs religion. And this isn't going to be my opinion. I'm going to review a book by an atheist who started off to write a book to debunk religion and came up with the fact that America needs religion. So hang on that one. And then we're going to say human beings need religion. We need something transcendent. We need something beyond what our everyday affairs tell us it's going on. So our series 1 that Tom talked about for a couple of years, we took the question, has science rediscovered a creator? And we wanted to look at the scientific evidence, the evidence even from materialistic science of what the last 50, 60 years has shown us. And we came to a conclusion that there is a creator. And we looked at it has to be a creator for the universe. The Big Bang is actually very consistent with what we know from the Bible, with the Genesis account. Things started off in the beginning. The Bible says it started from, I'll call it a Big Bang, started with His Word. Planet Earth, fine-tuned for life. Science will acknowledge that everything is so precisely, infinitely tuned. How did that come about without a fine tuner? There has to be a designer. You can't design a machine. You can't have a machine that has no design behind it. Life's beginning. Well, life comes from life. Origin of the species, abrupt appearance in the final record. So all this is documented on the website. So I really encourage you to go out to the website. That was the series 1. And then series 2 are the 6 topics that Tom talked about today. And they're best explained by intelligent design. So what is religion? What am I going to talk about? I'm not talking about institutional religion here. I'm not trying to convert you to an institutional religion. That's not the point. Religion is something that's very, very human. Religion is, in fact, the word comes from the Latin to rebind, and it means to take the physical and the metaphysical and bind it together. What does that mean? Well, metaphysical is just meta, beyond the physical. There's physical, and then there's something beyond the physical. There's something called, what we call transcendent beyond it. So I'm calling that our creator. The traditional religious view is, when we think about it, is our religion, whether we put a label on it or whatever, but it's what we hold the most tightly to. It's our way of understanding reality most fully, and it's our way of living life rightly, as the Greeks would say. How do you live life rightly? That's religion. What do you cling to? What's the most important thing in your life? And there's a physical component to it and a metaphysical component. There's the top-down component, and there's the bottom-up component. It gives us a big picture of our origin and destiny. The cosmos is not all there is. There's something beyond. There's something transcendent. Religion guides us to know ourselves and to live rightly with others in our world. And it's what we value, what we worship, and we all worship something. And even the March Madness, right? We have to pick a team. You can't just watch a game of people shooting balls through hoops. It's about picking a team. What do you value? What do you hold on to? What are you willing to die for? In fact, Socrates said, if it's not worth dying for, it's not worth living for. Think about that. I see religion, those guys in the boat. Imagine being in that boat, and you're in the middle of an angry ocean, waves, and then all of a sudden there's no stars in the sky. You don't know where you're going. You have no ability to see anything. There's no lighthouse. There's no land at all. And it's dark. There's no light. That's what life is without some beacon. As soon as we see a lighthouse, there's land. There's something I can anchor to. There's something I can start from. There's a point to measure things from. There's the North Star. Now I can navigate. Now I know what direction I'm going. The North Star, it sets our moral compass. We talked about that several times. The lighthouse tells us where the land is on which we can anchor. And the light that's around us, light is the most fundamental thing there is. In the Genesis account, if you know that account, light is the very first thing that God created. Let there be light. Light, and physicists say the same thing, that the photon, the light is the most amazing thing. It travels at 186,000 miles a second, has no mass, but it has all this energy. It's the most fundamental thing that there is. C.S. Lewis put it this way when he he was a hardcore atheist that became a Christian. He called himself the most reluctant convert in England. And he had some very fascinating ways of putting things. And he said, I believe in Christianity as I believe that the sun has risen, not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else. That's what we need. We need a light. We need some way of seeing where we are and where we're going. Now, very interesting time in history right now. This is, we see all the negatives, and we see what's happening to the young generation falling away. And 9 out of 10 in surveys say they have no meaning and purpose in life. Suicide rates, I mean, I could go through all the statistics. You know the statistics as well as I do. There's no anchors. There's no North Star. And even the top intellectuals that are agnostic will even admit that. In fact, they're looking at religion in a whole different way now. Several of the top ones. Here's Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson right now is probably considered America's number one, well, North America anyway, top intellectuals in the world. His books sell by the millions, and he has millions of young people following him. Yeah, he's not a Christian, but he believes all the Bible stories are very, very helpful to mental health. And he says he vigorously promotes the value of biblical wisdom. Tom Holland, who's a top historian, wrote a number of histories of ancient civilizations, has said that Western civilization was established because of Christianity, not by the Enlightenment. This is what you learned in school. The Enlightenment period did it when man's rationality became so good that we progressed. No, it was established because of Christianity. And we see all of a sudden a renewed interest in the Bible, of all things, the Bible. The Bible last year, more than 22% increase over the year before, and it's mostly with young people buying the Bible. Pretty remarkable. If you TikTok tracks likes, there's tens of millions of likes on these kind of conversations. 46% increase in Bible sales since 2023. So, and there's this new support of public intellectuals now. Well, what is the Bible? I mean, people I talk to, they don't, unless they go to church or synagogue or someplace, they don't even really know what the Bible is. Have you ever read the Bible? No. Do you know what the Bible is? No. Well, why the interest in the Bible? Well, it's a pretty remarkable book. I mean, where else can you find a book that tells the story of God and mankind from the very beginning to the very end? That's pretty incredible. I mean, here's one story. A unified and consistent account of creation from the beginning to the end. All right, well, an author could do that. I mean, there's no reason an author couldn't put a story together like that. We know it's the foundational document of Western civilization. Tom Holland tells that in his book, Dominion. It's the foundational document of the United States, right? Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Where did those ideals come from? They came from the Bible. It's been wisdom and inspiration for people of all nations. This isn't just United States. This is all nations. Over 3,000 years, it's proven trustworthy, and it's proven to be historically and scientifically consistent. Well, that's pretty remarkable, but here's the most remarkable part about it. It's not one author, human author anyway. There's 40 individual human authors of this. I mean, it'd be hard enough to get 2 or 3 authors to agree on how to write a story that covers all those main topics. Here we have 40 authors, and they're separated by hundreds of years, 1,000 years. And they're not only separated by years over a 1,500-year period, they're written in 3 different languages and 3 different continents. Well, but the Bible has to be, it's been translated and all of. We don't even have the original documents, right? There's more documents, more manuscripts of this book than there is. In fact, there's 40 times more manuscript surviving evidence than even the second most important book, which was Homer's Iliad. And 5 billion copies have been sold, 5 times more than all the copies combined. of the next five largest sellers. So I would encourage you, if you've never read the Bible, pick up a copy, dust it off, and read it and find out for yourself what's in there. It's a fascinating story. But the inherit the wind stereotype persists. What is that stereotype? Well, these are religious people just marching. They're backwoods people. They're ignorant. Science, the intellectuals are the smartest. In fact, the religious people are... I encourage you to see this movie. I love the movie. I probably have seen it a dozen times. I've seen it in 3 different versions of it because I love the drama of it and the story of the Scopes trial in 1925. But why does this, with all the evidence that the Bible is a reasonable book and the evidence that there is a creator and a transcendent dimension, why does this stereotype persist today? And why does it persist in the schools? Well, here's how it happened. Science, which is a wonderful tool, became scientism. What do I mean by scientism? Well, extended their domain too far. Not only did they kick the humanities out and the religious people out and put them in a building somewhere else on campus, but they elevated science to the only way of getting at truth. Now, I admit the scientific method is wonderful. It's a way of controlled experiment. You make hypotheses, you test, and so forth. It's a filter by which you can get at what the evidence says. But you have to allow the evidence to be on the table to do that. If you're not going to allow the evidence for God, can God put evidence for himself on the table? No, not allowed. Well, if he's not allowed, then no amount of evidence is ever going to convince anybody about that. So if you elevate science as the only reliable way of truth, well, I have truth from psychology, I have truth from social science, I have truth from archaeology, I have truth from religion, and so, well, no, but my science is the most important way, and it's the only way of really getting at truth. All right, well, if you're going to make that as an arbitrary dogmatic assumption, then that's how science became scientism. It elevated material things to the only things that are real. We know that there's something transcendent beyond the universe. There's something there. I want to be free to go investigate it. I want to be a thinker. I want to evaluate what's out there. But if I say that those things aren't real, the only things that are real are the things that are physical, that are material. If I reduce religion to atheism, and that's what's happened, there is no other religion other than atheism. Atheism is not only the preferred religion in our educational system among intellectuals, it's the only religion. And the tunnel vision of scientism is what I just talked about, and it's protected by these systems within our culture. It's protected by higher education, it's protected by the media, and it's protected by the legal system. I'm going to pop through these. Let's look at scientism. The world we experience is more than materialism. How do we know that? Well, just think for a minute. Think about yourself. Know yourself. Know yourself. Just don't trust what we're being taught. Our consciousness, our feelings, our emotions, our soul, our spirituality are all real. In fact, that's what makes us real. And yet they're immaterial. They're not material. Our values, our beliefs. Our values are our beliefs. Everything do I go to the right? Do I go to the left? Is that true or not true? Am I going to do this tomorrow? Am I going to do that tomorrow? Whatever we do, our values, what's good, what's bad, what's beautiful and not beautiful, what's true and not true, those are our values. They're coming to that conclusion. We live by values. We just don't live by scientific facts. Sure, you read the label and see what the facts are in there. What's the effect that drug is going to have on you? Truth, goodness, and beauty. We know there has to be truth out there. If there's not truth, we're just living a random universe. There's nothing. We live, we die, and become worm food. How did Bertrand Russell put it? I forgot exactly how he put it, but our values are not illusions. They emerge, and they don't emerge by evolution. These values are accessible by the scientific method. You might ask me how materialism answers that. That's a whole question by itself, and I'll be glad to tell you about that afterwards. But I want to get to these protections for the view of scientism in the culture. Higher education protects the culture this way. Truth is no longer the goal in the university. The university was set up university. There was all these different views of truth. And the monks in the Middle Ages said, we ought to put these together so we can wire the dots together. How can we make some uniform understanding out of all the diversity? That's how the university started. Well, that's not what the university is anymore. The university is, there's truth for the physics building, there's truth for the psychology building, there's truth for the religious building, there's truth for the art studio, and so forth. Your truth is your truth, my truth is my. We know that's ridiculous. You can't live that way, and yet that's what's happened in higher education. Higher education, truth is no longer the goal. Humanities are marginalized. If it's not physics, mathematics, if it's not reduced to the front page of Scientific American, then it's something less than valuable. God and religion are just ignored. I mean, they don't even make it to the table. And materialism is prioritized over everything else. Ethics and morality, that has to have some material explanation. We won't even deal with that. If it can be done, it should be done. No. We're not going to create a virus that's going to kill the world. We're not going to do biomedical engineering and manipulate the genome unless it's morally safe. Morality ought to be more tethered to science than it is. The media protects this combination as well. I mean, public television, any of your stations that you look tonight, how many documentaries have you ever seen on the disconfirming evidence of Darwinism? 0. There is no such a thing. Because according to the public television, according to the university, there is no disconfirming evidence. It's only positive evidence. Well, that's not true. We spent 3 years studying this and example after example of things that challenge the Darwinian paradigm. And I don't see any documentaries on public television anyway. I see it from the Discovery Institute. I see it for things I can dig out and books I can read by authors, but I don't see anything on public television. I mean, scientism is presented as fact, and religion is only personal values. You can have your religion if you want it, so long as you keep it to yourself. Shut up. Don't come out in the public square. Don't even vote. I mean, just have fun with your friends. Go bowling on Friday night and be a good little religious person, but don't bother me as far as searching for truth. Darwin just can't be. He can't even be challenged, and yet he is being challenged now. That was the beauty of our study. We saw in the last 50 years that the whole foundation is crumbling. It doesn't even hold water anymore. Even the Royal Institute in Great Britain has called for, we need a new evolutionary paradigm. We need a different evolutionary theory. There's too much going on with Darwin that doesn't make sense today. The legal system protects all this too, because there's the wholesale adoption of Darwinism, and it supports atheism in public schools, but not theism. What do I mean by that? Well, materialism is an atheistic ideology. It means there's no God. Has science proven that there's no God? No. There's no proof that we can't prove God. We can't not prove God, so we ought to put both options on the table. But every time that has been tried over the years, and you can see 1925 was the beginning of that test, Arkansas in 1982, then Louisiana in 1987, even Pennsylvania as early as 2006. Anytime there's an opportunity to put God on the table, even in the smallest way, not even as religious dogma, just as is their design and purpose in the universe. And that's what the science of intelligent design shows. Is there intelligent design? Can we show something has been designed? We can, scientifically. We can actually show something has been designed or not designed. Sure, they have to make probability statements about it, but it's science. It's not a matter of battling ideology. That's not allowed. All the Pennsylvania school district that wanted to do, all they wanted to do was have a statement in the library that a student could voluntarily pick up that introduced them to the science of intelligent design. That some things in the universe are better explained by design and purpose. Didn't say anything about religion, didn't say anything about God. It just says, take a look like Plato and Aristotle did and ask all 4 questions. Is this thing designed? Does it look like it was designed for a purpose? Reject it. The headlines are intelligent design called pseudoscience by the judge in Dover, Pennsylvania. You can't decide a question like that by a judge ruling. You know, the judge actually he bragged about viewing Inherit the Wind before he made that decision. He bragged about that. He thought that was showing that he was very intellectual about the whole thing. But here's what's going to happen. It's going to come crumbling down. And the reason it's going to come crumbling down is because truth does not get held back by dogma. Truth has to come through. The data. One thing I love about science is there's data. You can get a data, and a data eventually wins out. Now, it might take the funeral of the Bertrand Russells and the Richard Dawkins and so forth for the younger generation to come and absorb that. But, you know, just 100 years ago, the Scopes trial was exactly the reverse of what's going on today. In that trial, Tennessee had put a law in that evolution could not be taught, evolution of human beings could not be taught in their public school. That's what that trial was all about. Today, it's just reverse. You can't even put an intelligent design document into a library without the school district being sued. So that's 100 years. 100 years from now, maybe this will come crashing down in the next 10 years. It's very, very, very possible. And what's going to happen? Why the traditional religious view is better? Because God's fingerprints, the Creator's fingerprints for design and purpose, they're all over everything. Isaac Newton was probably the most brilliant scientist. Even Einstein says Newton was something else. Newton was both a Christian and he was also a great scientist. He said, if I didn't believe in God, all I have to do is look at my hand. That's all I have to do to know that there's design and purpose in the universe. The universe, Earth, species, human beings, that's all on the website. Evolution doesn't have creative power. If you ask yourself, if you really want to understand how evolution works, it's something called random variation and natural selection. You'll find out it only has very minuscule power. It has power to adapt. We know that creatures adapt to their environment. We know that we can breed pigeons to be different. We know we can breed dogs, but we can't make pigeons into dogs. And it doesn't have that kind of creative power. And yet that's hidden from the public. I mean, hidden only in the sense that they're not, public isn't educated in these things. Evolution doesn't have the creative power. The experimentation does not support that life comes from evolution. Neuroscience and psychology are much better explained by a mind than they are by random collection of. I mean, if my brain came together through a random collection of molecules, why would I trust any conclusion that I have up here? Much better explained by a mind than it is by material. Here's the cracks in the science. We're seeing right now before us. After COVID response, we're seeing the cracks in the science never has had this much antipathy toward it. It's been the priesthood of our society, but now that's changing. A lot of us are just very disappointed with the COVID response. A lot of us see that following the science in pharmaceuticals and so forth is not the way to go. We're disappointed in that the climate change has turned into a debate. It's no longer a debate. It's just a political brawl. We see that cancel culture. If somebody comes up and wants to talk, like if I was in the business and I had talk like this at the university, they would cancel it. That's no way to conduct intellectual society. And then look at the bottom here, the Royal Society, 2016, they called a group together. They said, Darwinism is broken. We need a new evolutionary paradigm. So the intelligent design people were there, sitting there. They couldn't even answer a question without being shunned. If they asked a question, they'd be shunned because they're not in control. Politically, the evolutionary paradigm still reigns. But all they want to do is replace Darwinism. But that's cracks in the foundation. It's showing. Okay. We showed that religion has to offer America or gives an improved scientific explanation. This was fascinating, this book by Gunter Louis, atheist political science professor. He wrote a book to debunk religion. And he has graph after graph, statistic after statistic, and so forth. He became convinced that the moral decline of modern America was caused by the weakened role of religion. Let's go through some of the things that he found out. He's a scientific materialist, so he would agree with the National Academy of Science, and he's a moral relativist, so he doesn't even have a religion. He's basically an atheist. So he's about as pure a researcher as you can get, but he was open-minded. And he was open-minded. He's looking at all this data, and he said, that his research led him to conclude that religion provides a moral anchor to people. Well, that's pretty important to have a moral anchor. He found out that if there's no transcendent values to judge by, then anything goes, anything's okay. He found out that all great religions have consistent rules to live by. Jordan Peterson, who's agnostic, wrote a book that sold several million copies of 12 Rules of Living. We found out when we investigated other religions that very consistent from one religion to another, that there's actual, real, objective rules to live by, that there's truth out there. And that the infinite God would give a trajectory toward the true, good, and beautiful. We want to move toward the true, the good, and the beautiful. We don't want to go down to the false, the ugly. We want to go up. And an infinite God gives us a trajectory. He found out that religion is what gives us meaning and purpose. We're not going to answer those big questions of Socrates without religion, some kind of transcendent belief system. We need a big picture. We need to have a story. Where do we come from? People do their ancestry. Well, we need to know where the earth came from. Where did all the people come from? Did they come from Adam and Eve? They come from the pond scum? Right now, basically, our ancestor is pond scum. Well, can't that be answered with, no, it looks like there was actually a first couple. Well, what's the scientific evidence for that? Well, a lot of scientific evidence for it. We can show it to you. How about love? How about the things that really make us human? Love, relationship, forgiveness, altruism. How about when we look at ourselves and we find out how radically self-centered we are? Every religion sees that. It's just not the biblical religion. We know that there's something wrong inside, deep inside. Where do we get our moral strength from? What about death and the afterlife? We talked about utopia. We talked about heaven. And that's all on the website, too. Those things aren't going to be answered by materialism. He saw the importance of family. He saw that the family is the fundamental foundation of society. It's where character development takes place. He saw that the traditional family is the best protection from dysfunction and crime, and it's better than any of the alternatives that the woke generation has brought before us. He saw the failure of social programs as a substitute for the traditional family. He saw that the negative impact of scientism had on the moral decline. this is an excellent book that was written in 2023 by Justin Brierley, who's a Christian religious broadcaster. And he put it this way, the surprising rebirth of belief in God. He gets an atheist and a Christian basically on his podcast, and they have a nice, real conversation. It's not even a debate. It's a real conversation. And he says, why the new atheism grew old and secular thinkers are considering Christianity again. Okay, we went through, gives a better scientific explanation. These are reasons why religion is important. It gives America needs religion based on needing a moral anchor, and it explains why our belief in religion is important. Now we're going to say, well, why do we as human beings need to have religion? Well, how do we anchor our thoughts and actions beyond the immediate? How do we do that? How do we find the lighthouse? How do we find the North Star for our moral compass? How do we know that there's a measure out there that we can be consistent, that 1 inch is 1 inch, and it's not a foot, and it doesn't change the next day? How do we get consistent meaning and purpose? Or every day we wake up and say, what's my meaning and purpose today? No, where am I going? We all have expiration tag here. We're going to be gone in 30, right? 30 minutes, 30 days, 30 years. Belief in anything creates continuous chaos. G.K. Chesterton said, when you lose the belief in God, you don't believe in nothing. You believe in anything. That's where we are. You can believe in anything. Well, that anything is your religion if you grasp onto it. We need that anchor. How do we sort out life? Well, it requires a consistent standard of measure. We need to know that that is that today, and that is that yesterday, and that is that tomorrow. How do we get wisdom, prudence, and help beyond ourselves? Are we our own God? Or is there a God that gives us that meaning and purpose? But we have to take that first step to reach out and connect to the transcendent. It doesn't just happen. So I had that divine encounter in my 30s, some 40 years ago. And I wrote it up in a magazine called Salvo, and copies of this are, if this is of interest to you. Greg, you want to come on up, and we'll talk about this somewhat. You can pick up a copy of it on your way out if you're interested at all. But when I came to this conclusion that I needed those kind of things, a moral anchor, and I needed to, I knew that there was a transcendence, that, oh yeah, maybe there's a God out there. I'm going to poke a hole in the sky and see if that God would reveal himself. And I did. And 3 years later, we were going to talk about that, how what my journey was anyway. But here's the part that I want you to think about. You'll never know until you go look. You never know until you go look. So with that, Greg and I are going to have a little conversation about my experience with this. And geez, what happened to the thinker here? He lost his arm. You weren't hungry, were you, Greg?
Now it looks like every other European statue that I've ever seen. So. Well, thank you, Stu. What an enlightening talk. Yeah, very, very good. I just love how you compare the truth of science, which nobody denies, but with the truth of religion, and how when they intersect, I love that graphic that he had up there. When they intersect, you have both truth in religion and truth in science, and that really is the best explanation for the reality that we experience. And I love that you continue to hammer that month after month in this, because we as a society, we as human beings, we need to open our minds to all the evidence and follow it where it leads. And so I appreciate that. I can't think of a better way to close out today, but also close out the season. This is the last forum of season 4. But I can't think of a better way to close that out than just to talk about your experience. And because I understand that, and this is such a great article that he wrote. There are some copies in the back, I believe, right? But pick it up. Stu wrote it about 1.5 years ago. He tells a little bit about his story. But you didn't have a tradition, you didn't come to the Christian worldview in the traditional way. I mean, I came at a church camp when I was in 3rd grade. You know, that often happens. We'd love to hear a little bit about how you came to the knowledge of the Christian worldview.
Well, I wasn't raised in a Christian home, and not a religious home at all. I was always interested in science. I was the kid with the telescope and the nerd in school with my slide rule and so forth. And when I went to college, I was just surrounded with scientism. There was no explanation of why this stuff happened. Is there a transcendent? It's just never mentioned. I mean, God could have been there. Somebody had to start this whole thing off, but whatever it was, it's irrelevant. And the first and second law of thermodynamics was really important, not any of the stuff that I talked about here. And it served me well. Went on to graduate school and got a good job and started a company, and all that was wonderful. It was following the mantra of a successful, everyday businessman. My mantra was fame and fortune, status and leadership, power and security. That was my mantra. And I would jog every day and say that to myself to get myself hyped up for it. And
you actually say in the article, you say, this is a quote, "I was a scientific materialist and I knew that science had the universe figured out. Everything had come together accidentally by random variation and natural selection over long periods of time. God was either a myth or worse, a delusion." That's what you quote as something that you believed in your early life.
Good.
And I just wonder, how do you think you knew that at that time?
Well, I came to the end of myself. There was two things. I came to the end of myself. One is you can only have so much success. You know, you can only buy. My first car was a $60 58 Buick, right? my car at this time that I'm considering this is a new Jaguar, right? So you can only come so far on that. I lived in a beautiful home in Palos Verdes. I had a beautiful family and kids, and everything was going up. But I have to ask myself, where is this going? I mean, what is the next level? Is that going to bring anything more? I mean, it brought a lot more when it went from a 58 Buick to a Jaguar. But what's the difference? Am I going to have three Jaguars? So that was one bug. And then there was a hole in my heart for all these questions, these big questions. You know, if God's out there, why doesn't he reveal himself?
So that was what you felt was lacking, that
was
this other
whole
worldview didn't answer the big questions of life.
Big question. And I put it this way, meaning and what is my meaning and purpose? You know, why am I here? Those are the three big questions. And how did I get here? I mean, if science, the first law of thermodynamics said that matter and energy can't be created nor destroyed, yet it's all here.
Here we are.
So there's something missing that nobody's talking about. And then I realized that the world system, I called it out of kilter. Today I call it a lie. You know, the lie. It's like turning on the television and seeing 5 commercials in a row telling you that all you need is their product.
Yeah.
And that finally got to me in my 30s, and I just said, it has to be something more.
So you said actually also that, of course, the society then and even now just tells us that if you get to the next level of power or wealth, that then you will have made it, and then you will be happy. And it's interesting that you said in this article, you actually felt instinctively that each new level of wealth and materialism was less satisfying, not more.
Incrementally, it gets less and less and less. You know, the next a new Jaguar or a new vacation, or worse yet, a new honey, destroying your family. None of that made any sense. So there had to be something that I wanted to find out. Yeah.
So you mentioned Francis Schaeffer, and the influence that he had in your coming to the Christian worldview. Do you want to explain a little bit about that?
Francis Schaeffer, a Christian philosopher. First of all, I have to tell you, I had a very negative view of Christianity. And it wasn't negative in the sense, it was more like that old-time religion thing. You know, these are backward people. They know less than anybody else. They're not as smart. They go bowling on Friday night, and I go to a cocktail party. And so I had a very kind of a negative view of that. And we were out with a couple one night, and he was a very successful business guy in Silicon Valley. And he said, "You ever read Francis Schaeffer?" I said, "No," because I was doing a lot of philosophical discussion, studied world religions, been through a lot with that kind of study. And I said, "No," and he said, "Well, read this book, The God Who Was There." And oh, okay, well, I'll read it. I was impressed with him. That's why I read the book. And so I read it, and he likened it that we live in the lower level of a house, and there's a noise in the attic. And you'll never know what that noise is until you go up and check it out. And that stuck with me all the time, that I check it out. So I looked around and saw, well, transcendent God, if God's out there, I have to go check it out. So I went and poked a hole in the ceiling, but that's the next part of the story.
Yeah. And Schaeffer actually, he kind of compares the lower level with the material world, right? That we're all in and so forth, and we're all used to. But there's that attic, that upper level, and he talks about that being the transcendent, right?
Transcendent attic, right?
Yeah. Although I like how you put it that LA was full of smog at the time, and so you said that you were kind of in the lower story in the smog, right? But you were thinking,
oh, that was really an interesting picture I had. Here I am in LA. My office was in downtown LA, and I would come in from my home. And in those days, the 3,000-foot layer of smog was just hanging over the valley, San Gabriel Mountains. Where above that, snow-capped, beautiful, snow-capped, and here's this smog layer. And I had this picture of, that's where I live. I live in this smog. There's something transcendent. There's something beyond that.
Yes.
And there it is. It's a beauty. It drew a picture, and it gave me courage to go look.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
You also mentioned about you knew that maybe it would take some kind of a step of faith, but you wanted to avoid blind faith. Can you explain what you meant by that?
I was scared to death. I mean, to go investigate this, because we had our arrogance that we were intellectually smart enough to do all this, all those things that I talked about, scientists, that's how I was raised and so forth. And I thought, geez, if I go do this religious quest, I'm checking my brain at the door. And so that was very scary. It really was. It took a faith of I found out later that the Bible talks about the faith of a mustard seed. I think I had the faith of a quarter of a mustard seed, but I had to take that first step to at least screw up my courage, that I wasn't dropping my brain at the door by poking a hole in the ceiling and looking what's up there.
And that's what you found, right? When you took a step in faith, just trying to investigate, you suddenly realized that there was more to it than you didn't have to check your brain at the door.
Yeah, and that's not a blind faith. That's what Dawkins gets wrong. He says faith is blind faith. It's evidential faith. Nobody does things without evidence for things. And you don't need to go through all this like I did. I don't necessarily recommend people wrestle with it like I did. But you have to base it on some kind of evidence. And I needed evidence. It was an extraordinary claim. It needed extraordinary evidence in my case. And I was, but you do have to take that first step of faith. So it's not blind faith that Dawkins and the anti-theists believe. It's really, they call it blind faith, but we talk about evidence-based faith.
You bet.
Yep.
Yeah, William Lane Craig calls a good definition of faith is putting your trust in what you think is true. And I think that's really good. Yep. Of course, we don't have perfect knowledge. You do have to take steps towards what you think is true, but there's evidence there as well.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's really good. I'm going to just close out. We want to make sure we have time for Q&A, but your article ends with the following quote. It says, you say, "Real meaning and purpose can only come by looking up, seeking God, and finding a personal relationship with Him through Christ. And science in its pure form, freed from the philosophical presupposition of materialism, convincingly reveals compelling evidence for a creator." I think it's a perfect way to end this little interview and the season, because this is what Socrates has been all about for 4 years, right? That once you dump the presupposition of materialism, your mind is open to follow the evidence where it leads. And of course, your investigations, mine, the churches, say that it leads to the Christian worldview. You know.
Did I really say that?
It's right here, folks. Get it outside while it's hot, yes.
I write better than I talk.
Very good. So, Tom, if you're ready, we can perhaps take some questions from the audience.
I first and foremost would like to thank both of you gentlemen for sharing your insights. This was very interesting. My name is Justice Smith. I'm with Proverbs Media Group, and we have a studio in Oro Valley. And if you gentlemen are located in the city, I would love to get contact information later, perhaps do an interview with you guys and have a theological discussion. My question for the two of you.
Tell us when and where. That sounds fun.
Let's do it, absolutely. I struggle with the problem of infinite regress. I want to first preface this. I am a Christian, but my background is in evolutionary psychology. So Darwin is somewhat of a hero to me, but I understand all of your points. And the way that I kind of reconcile the main issue that you've addressed today of having a mutually exclusive space for science and religion is an evolutionary theistic perspective. I think that perhaps the medium at which God might have engendered creation would be through evolution, which wouldn't necessarily subtract God from the question, which, of course, in a linear sense, we'd have to go back to the original cause. Can you talk about your thoughts on infinite regress?
Well, infinite regress means you're still regressing. You're not getting there. It's like waiting at the train station for the train that left an infinite time ago. You'll be waiting there. If you have an infinite regress, you don't have any beginning point. So there has to be some kind of beginning point for anything to make sense. That's one aspect of it. I think mathematics gives us a insight into infinity. You know what an asymptote is in mathematics, right? A graph that comes down. It never. Zeno's paradox is my favorite. Where's my? Oh, there's my honey. Okay. She says, "What is it? What is Zeno's paradox? Start 3 feet from a wall." And I said, I can reach that wall. Well, of course you can. I said, but I have to do it this way. I can only go halfway at a time. So my first step is 1.5 feet, right? The next step is half of that. I never get to but the wall is there. So having some kind of idea of infinity, but not being able to reach it, I think is a way that God draws us to seek. And I love that idea of seeking, but not quite getting there, finding that, because we'll never wrap our mind around it. So I love the idea of infinite regress, but it's not a real thing. It can't be a real thing. I'd still be waiting at the train station.
Good question.
Any other questions?
A real tough one. How in the world can we get the false teachings out of our school? It's been proven even by Darwin's own statement that all of his evolution stuff can't be true because of the mechanism in the chromosomes, everything you can't see, and there is a machine in there, and he explains it. But also, there were over 1,600 very prominent scientists that wrote a declaration against Darwin's evolution, because they have proven otherwise, actually, especially by the Cromonian evolution, I'm saying it wrong, where all around the world in the valleys at the same certain level, you have all of our species come alive. I got the wrong word. You know what I mean.
Yeah, I love Darwin as a scientist, so don't get me wrong when I critique his theory. I mean, he spent a lot of time in nature. He did a good job in his scientific investigation. I just think his theory is wrong. So how do you get it out of the school? I don't even want it out of the school. I just want to get another view to the table. So really the issue is not getting Darwin out of the school or supplanting the science with the Bible. That's not really the issue. The issue is getting the hypotheses that are legitimate to the table and weighing the evidence for and against and allowing people to come to their own decision for or against. This gentleman said something about evolutionary. He's an evolutionary psychologist, so we'll probably disagree on some details on evolution, but having that discussion is the best part. The discussion is the best part. So, how do you get it out of the school? You don't with a court trial. The Dover School District of Pennsylvania tried that in 2006, and it ends up poorly. You do it a paradigm change at a time. As I said, 100 years ago, the paradigm was one way. Now the paradigm's this way. The data eventually gets to, and it has to start at the grassroots level. That actually, the reason I do this is because it has to start in audiences like this, in grassroots. And there's enough of these grassroots movements that'll come up, and there'll be some school boards that will allow this, and then eventually it'll come to pass. But we got to be knowledgeable. And so I really commend all of you for even coming out or going to our website and becoming knowledgeable on this, because we're just bullied over a lot of times with a lot of bluster and a lot of false information.
Stu, could I just give a common sense suggestion on this? Call Darwinism a theory in the classroom and just teach what evidence there is for it and teach what evidence there is against it. And it seems like a reasonable step to take. And
That's excellent.
That's the way things should be taught in school.
Yeah,
So-
here's a theory, but it can't even be called a theory without
Right.
somebody setting ACLU in motion
exactly.
against it. But you're absolutely right, Greg. That's the best way of doing it. Get it to the table, get evidence for and evidence against.
Excuse me, could you speak, I'm over here.
Gotcha.
Could you speak to other religious approaches other than Christianity?
Yeah, in what way? How would you like me to speak to him?
Well, I've heard Christian approach. What if somebody's a Muslim? If they follow a different faith other than Christianity?
Absolutely.
Speak to that, please.
Yeah, thank you for asking that, because I would love to have done that even in this talk, but it was just so broad a topic. Muslims, most religions of the world have some form of creator, and that creator talks to that culture in an absolute way, and that's the creation story for that culture. So that's how I think God, I'll say generically how God talks to each culture, that it makes nations, and those nations come up with a way of finding that God and worshiping that God. And what we'll see is the consistency over time of that religion will have a creator. Muslims have a creation story. Only the Eastern religions don't have a full creation story, but they still believe in an eternal universe and an eternal God. So you'll see that most religions have like a 10 Commandments associated with them. There'll be a way of living rightly, not living living wrongly. You'll see that most religions have a way of evaluating evidence, and so I think any religion can benefit from this kind of analysis that says that the universe is just not material. There is a transcendence, and I think that's where you have to start with this kind of investigation. Is there even a transcendence out there? Yes, there is. Well, who is that transcendence? Is there a creator? And if there's a creator, then what does that creator create us? Does he have a meaning and purpose for us? And you can apply that methodology to any religion.
Thank you. I thought that's where you'd go with that. And then in my head, that squares up the discussion in a classroom then. Because then you're not proposing or supporting a specific religion. You're asking the question and then letting the discussion lead to the answer, which makes sense to me.
Well, thank you, and thank you for asking it that way. The reason we talk about Christianity is because we've been very open that that's how we found our faith. You know, so that's why the emphasis on the Christian worldview.
Thank you.
And I like how you put it, that you get together and you actually follow the evidence where it leads, because like Dr. Orr just said, there's a lot of evidence for a transcendent God, and that can be included in a lot of religions, but you got to keep going. And I think both of us would agree that the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus and the evidence for that actually sets Christianity apart. And so if you continue to follow the evidence, at least this is what I have come to this conclusion, that Christianity is the true worldview. So, but a lot of what he said can cover more general topics in religion.
Yeah, we have attacked that issue of comparative religions. That could be a whole next season of doing something like that.
You brought up the first law of thermo. I didn't like the thermo class when I was taking it in the old days. But for a long time, I've pondered this thing of creation. And on the one hand, matter cannot be created or destroyed, only changed. However, when creation happened, there was nothing. So, you know, it seems like a little bit of a contradiction of, if God is perfect and he had all these laws, the physical laws that are really perfect, where did that first matter come from? It's kind of like the question of, you know, if God can do anything, can he make a stone that he can't move? You know?
Well, one thing we notice about God is that he is the truth, right? I mean, that's how I would define God. He is the ultimate truth. He's the greatest conceivable being, the greatest truth, the greatest good, the greatest beauty. All right, so does he create the universe out of nothing? He can do anything he wants to do, right? I mean, the way we define God as the greatest conceivable being, he chose, the way I see it, this is the way I see the transcendent God, he chose to design the universe that we have. Does that help, or do you want me to expound more on that? Could he create something that, a stone that he can't move? Well, that would make him inconsistent, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. I mean, he's not good. He doesn't break his own consistency. He's the same today. You know, the way we would define God, he's eternal, all-powerful, all-knowing, consistent, the same. The day minus one, creation day minus one is afterwards, and he chose on a personal basis to create the universe that we have. Mm-hmm. That's what the God hypothesis is. Now, you can define a hypothesis any way you want and prove something else, but that's the way we've been defining God.
The question I have is, do you have to believe in God to have a faith and in the religion that you were born in or have selected? As a Jew, I was born into a Jewish family, did not have religious education, but the traditions and the culture kept me very happy. As I grew older, I took classes and learned more about my faith. But did I believe that there was a God? No. But I believe in what I find and I read and I learn in the Old Testament. And when I lost a child at an early age, did I blame it to God? No, because I have learned that we have our choices and we make our lifestyle. And God doesn't just pick that person out. That's life. Life is good and bad, and we have to go through life, through the bad times, the good times. But our culture, our Bible, teaches us to always move forward and live life. Do I believe in God? I question whether I believe in God, but I believe in my faith of Judaism.
Mm-hmm. Oh, very good comment. I would say that, do you have to believe in God? No, it sounds like you do have a religion, though. I mean, Judaism is your religion, as you define it, right? And if you believe in the Torah, then God says, I am who I am, that I am the eternal one. It says it in your scriptures, right? So do you believe that? You don't have to believe it, but that's what he says in his word. So you what you're saying is you really do believe in God. You believe in Judaism as your religion, but you do believe in God. And what's interesting about it is we believe in, as Christians, we believe in the same God that you believe in, because we believe in the God of the Old Testament. I'm just speaking as a Christian now. But I think we all agree with this analysis about transcendence, right? That God is outside the system, that he's all-powerful, and whether or not we go to him or have a connection with him, that's a personal choice on our basis, our point, whether we live by. Here's how I looked at it when I first investigated it. Either I'm my own God, or there is one God out there that defines everything. And I decided that I wasn't my own God, so the God, a creator God, had to exist. And then I discovered, since I wasn't even raised in a religious home, I didn't know what the Bible was. I read the Bible, read the Old Testament, and said, geez, I came to believe in that God of the Bible. And it is the one that says, I am who I am. Well, you have the pleasure of having the last comment.
Just a quick question, because we talked a lot about head knowledge and research. And I think, believe that there's a difference between head knowledge and heart knowledge. At some point in time, your research probably transformed your life at the heart level. And were you able, as a result, to answer the question for yourself of why am I here? And would you care to share what you discovered?
When I asked those questions of why I'm here, it was very disappointing to think that if I didn't have an answer, why would I even wake up tomorrow? Why should I wake up tomorrow? I think of Ernest Hemingway asked those kind of questions, and one morning he couldn't answer any more of what his meaning and purpose was in life and why he was here. And he put a shotgun in his mouth and blew his brains out. That's what happens. It can happen if you just kind of give up, or you can just say, "Well, I don't know and I don't care," and go on and buy toys for the rest of your life. That's not going to be satisfying. Or you can choose to listen to the culture and say, geez, if I just buy that product or that product and so forth, and not be satisfied. That drove me crazy. I had to have some kind of anchor, let's put it that way, something that was anchored on a transcendent being. And then I decided I wasn't my own God, so I had to find the God that was out there, and I ended up with the one we talked about. But other people end up some other place, even though their religion might be different, there's still that transcendent one creator that made them.